Welcome to Bachademai,
a podcast so educational it could be a university class.
With your hosts,
Danielle Dick McHugh,
Kim Hannah,
and Bill Henniger.
Welcome to Bachademai. You got Kim and Danielle today, and we are bringing all the deep insights on this season's Bachelorette. If you are listening in and are not watching this on YouTube, you should know that we dressed mostly Kim dressed the part. Kim, what are you wearing?
So I've decided that this season I'm just going to have a costume every time that is themed to whatever happened that week. So neither one of us are jewelry people. And so we both found whatever dangly earrings we have in our jewelry box. I think I bought these earrings for a wedding like 15 years ago. I wore them once. And what's yours?
So I was going to say, I only have one dangly earring in, and it's actually very pretty. My friend Jade made them for me. She Green Rocks is her company, and she makes jewelry, and they're super awesome.
That's awesome.
I love earrings, but I'm too lazy to remember to put them in every day. I'm too low maintenance for earrings.
And I get my hair caught in them if they're too dangly. So I'm a studs in the ear person.
Yeah. What else do you have on, Kim?
I'm wearing a scarf that I just pulled out of my winter clothes bin. So it smells a little musty because it's been in a bin since, well, let's be honest, March. It hasn't been in a bin that long because it was cold here for so long. It does not match the rest of my outfit. It is more of a fall theme, but I feel like nothing that Braydon wears fits within everything else that he's wearing. So I feel like it's okay to be wearing a little fall with a little summer with a little dangly wedding earrings.
I know. I wish I would have been able to wear a velvet shirt.
Question.
Yeah.
Do you own a velvet shirt?
I don't, and I feel like that's a flaw.
I disagree. I think that it's okay that you don't own a velvet shirt.
When I was a kid, every single Christmas, my mom would take us to the Nutcracker, and she would dress us in these burgundy velvet dresses. And then, we'd have on white tights and Mary Jane shoes. And so I think velvet is very fancy. It is what you should wear to a ballet.
I agree. I had a green velvet-esque. I'm sure it wasn't real velvet. I'm sure it was fake velvet, but I had a green velvet dress. That was one of my winter dress rotations, and I rocked that dress like nobody's business.
Did you wonder what the weather was like when they were filming this season of The Bachelorette? Because I did notice she had on a sweater. Charity had on a sweater a few times, and I was like, I wonder if it was chilly.
I think they filmed during that weird time when LA was getting lots of rain and even a little snow this winter. And so I think because I know that they had abnormally chilly weather for them in this winter. And so I think that must have been because I was looking at we'll get to it, but the crowd at the kissing scene were in all manner of different attire for the weather. So I couldn't tell if they were just we're on vacation and it's warmer here than where we came from. So obviously we're going to be wearing tank tops, or if that's just, people in California dress differently than people in Iowa do for the most part. So I just figured maybe that's just their thing.
Yeah, I was getting some weird mixed signals when it came to weather. So one of the things that I was thinking about as I was watching this, and so I just caught up and I watched the very first episode, and then I watched this week's episode, and I was so struck that I felt like so many of the contestants this season look like they should be in a boy band. And I can't decide if that's because they look like they should be in a boy band, or if they 90s hair is back and I just associate 90s hairstyles with boy bands. But I thought it would be really fun for us to start our question of the day by, if we were able to organize a boy band and produce like their first album, what would we name the band?
Yes. So I tried to be creative and I wasn't being successful. So I went to the Google machine and I typed in band boy name generator. And of course there were more than one website popped up to do it. So I chose a website and it asked me it was kind of like Mad Libs, where it would ask you a bunch of different things and then you hit submit and it would populate. So I got a bunch of names generated based off of the answers I gave to the Mad Lib. So I'm going to give you my favorite, and then I'm going to give you
excited.
a couple more that came up in my band name generator. So because also this would have been, if I was in a girl band in the 90s, this would have absolutely probably been my girl band's name. But my number one favorite is 17 Times Awkward.
Oh,
that would be my boy band name and my girl band name. But other top contenders off of my no, I'm not even joking. This is all names that were generated. It's like 25 or 30, I think. So my other contenders that I did not choose, but I loved, were Chet's Midnight Swimmers with their number one hit, Girl, Let's Jump in the Pool. I did just make that up. Another one is Purely Purple. Another one I loved was They Might Be Emotional Hamsters.
What?
Because they asked what like an animal, like a plural version of an animal, and I wrote hamsters, and so now some of my band names have hamster in them.
I love that.
Another one, this scarf is it's gonna not last very long. It's getting itchy. Another favorite is 17 Seconds to Cleveland. I think that could be a legit band name for boy bands from the 90s. I think 98 Degrees was from Ohio, so maybe they're from Cleveland. And then my another favorite was Au revoir, Hands.
Au revoir.
For the boy band was trying to be classy.
I love that. So I've always had a band name that I liked called Frozen Lotion.
Ooh,
Frozen Lotion is like my band name. But I went on to ChatGPT and I put in, I think I prompted it to give me some Bachelor boy band names. And y'all, ChatGPT is good for some things, but you'll have to be the judge if it's good at band names. So we have Heartthrobs United. I think my favorite one is Bachelor Beat.
Ooh.
Bachelor Beat is, pretty good, but some of these are pretty terrible. Gentleman's Melody? Like what?
No, that sounds like a strip club.
Or Captivating Pruners. Like these are Dashing Decibels.
Captivating Crooner sounds like an old man, like barbershop quartet name.
So bad. But yeah, so keep it up, ChatGPT. I'm sure you're only going to improve.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Maybe not. So I'm going to start with a quick recap, and then we are going to dive into some really deep questions, y'all.
Okay.
Deep ones. All right. So the first night is done, and they jump right into things. Like, I feel like this episode could have been episode 6.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like they just jumped right into things. And so the episode begins with Braydon, our dangly earring boy. He would be an interesting boy band member, but so he's really riding high. He got the first impression rose at the end of the first night, and he is tripping. And he gets a little upset when he doesn't get the first one-on-one. It's greedy, man, greedy. So Aaron B gets the first one-on-one, and they drive off in an old old school red convertible. They talk about music. Their parents both have military background. They actually seem to have an awful lot in common. Aaron has a double-sided lucky coin that gets mentioned repeatedly. And then they go up into the Hollywood sign and he flips the coin to see if they're going to be happy forever. And, you know, because it's double-sided, it lands on heads.
I called it last week. When he flipped that coin. I was like, that's a double-sided coin.
I did appreciate that he right away, he was like, okay, I gotta tell you, this is a double-sided coin. And her response was really good too. She said something like, yeah, that means we can only win, or something like that. And I thought it was cute. But then they have a romantic dinner. They really seem to be connecting. You know, I want to hear more about your thoughts on that date later. But so the next day there's a group date and they have a dodge bowl, not dodgeball, dodge bowl. They put on very bright Speedos. We learn that you gain the best dodgeball skills, apparently either at summer camp or being a pro wrestler. It was so funny. I had somehow missed what Caleb's job was. As I was taking notes, I was like, this dude is either a wild waters raft instructor in Colorado or he's in the WWE. And then it pops up and it said pro wrestler. I was like, yes, score.
Yep.
So I was kind of proud of myself for that.
I agree with Xavier though. I'm also a product of summer camp and I'm also really good at dodgeball.
Oh, you know, I like it when people have experiences like summer camp, or mine is, I was raised Mormon, and so there's all these ways that being Mormon reveals itself. And so I love that, oh, you went to summer camp, how do you know? They play dodgeball. You know, you can tell other summer camp people by their dodgeball skills.
And capture the flag. If you're good at capture the flag and dodgeball, you probably went to summer camp.
I love that. So then, you know, they have their group date dinner and John gets the group date rose, and he very, very boldly went in for a kiss there. I think he's super cute.
I think he's super cute, but I think his pants were super tight.
I noticed that too. I noticed his super tight pants. I feel like when women's pants get baggier, men's pants get tighter and vice versa. So right now, women are moving away from skinny jeans back into the flared bottoms or the wide leg, and men's jeans just keep getting skinnier and skinnier. I hope that they have some nice elastic in them though. You know, I worry for you if there's not enough elastic there. So Adrian, he really communicates to us that he feels like if you are playful, if you're in spring break mode, then you must not be serious about this whole thing. I will say Adrian is a man. He's a man. I feel like Adrian's a man. We'll talk about him more. But I disagree with his views on play. We learned that he has a daughter as well. Drama is starting to brew, y'all. And then in the next group date, it escalates even more as Joey makes all sorts of googly eyes at Charity, and then they kiss in front of everyone for a little over 4 minutes and break the longest kiss record in Bachelor history. This gets into the other guys' heads. And particularly Braydon, who's always been a little bit unraveled, is unraveling fast. Yo, this is only episode 2. I'm like, how are these guys unraveling? And it hasn't even started. So, you know, there's that. So the Adrian Braydon drama really heats up, and we end with a rose ceremony, really wondering, is she going to keep Braydon? And spoiler alert, she does. All right,
she does.
She does.
She keeps both of them. And we'll get into it, but I have thoughts.
You have thoughts. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Well, let's start right away with the Aaron B date. Like, okay, one, did you have any opinions on the double-sided coin? And then, like, is the double-sided coin, like, was it cute? Was it, like, romantic? Or did it feel like a little too, like, magician-y? Because I think you have opinions on magicians.
I do. I do not like magicians. Sorry, Ben Ulan at Adventureland.
Oh, he's so good.
But I thought it was very sweet. It was a way to remember him on day one, on when they all came out of the limos, because like we talked about last week, there weren't any like crazy introductions last week, so it's hard to stand out from the crowd when all the introductions were very vanilla. But I remembered his because of that coin flip. I also full disclosure, my second favorite of all the Batman movies is Batman Forever, and Two-Face, played by Tommy Lee Jones, always flipped a coin before he made decisions.
That's right.
And I feel like Adrian is a little bit like Two-Face. I don't feel like Aaron B is Two-Face. So maybe Adrian should have had the coin flip, not Aaron. And then I don't think it's magician-y because it wasn't like, if he had pulled the coin from behind her ear and then flipped it, I would have absolutely hated it and said, trash, go home right now. But because he just pulled it out of his pocket and he flipped it and he caught it and it was heads, I don't hate it.
It's just kind of like, lucky underwear or something, it's not
Yeah.
Like, it's more like superstition than it is like magic.
You always wear the same shirt on a first date.
What'd you think
maybe
about
it'll probably bring you luck.
What did you think about the Hollywood sign date? Like, was this super cool or is this like boring?
I personally would have loved this date. I would have loved everything about like this whole date. I was like, oh my gosh, between the cool car and riding around and just having the opportunity to talk to each other, I would have liked that. I feel like maybe they broke into I'm sure they had permission from the parks department, but like they had to go in through a gate to climb to the Hollywood sign. I would have loved that because it also kind of includes hiking, which I love. Then they went to the Los Angeles theater and had dinner in this amazing lobby that was so beautiful and so like 1930s, like golden age of Hollywood decorated theater. I loved this date. This would be a Kim Hanna date if someone out there wants to put together a date for me. This would be a good way to do it.
As a person going on a date, I would have liked this date because I want to be able to talk, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that there is a lot of opportunity for conversation. As a watcher of the show, I was like, we're just going to watch them crawl behind the Hollywood sign. I don't know.
But usually when they do the Hollywood sign, they're in a helicopter.
Yeah.
And they're screaming at each other because they can't hear over the noise and they have the headphones on. So yes, I would say that the helicopter version makes for better TV, but the driving there makes for her showing off how cool and chill she is.
I do think that it would be super cool to be able to say that you got to climb on like the Hollywood sign. I think that would be a big like life bucket list thing.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk about the dodgeball. Did you have any thoughts on the Speedos?
So my first season watching The Bachelor and The Bachelorette was the Claire Tasia season. So I got to witness Dodgeball 3, which was strip dodgeball.
Oh yeah.
And then in fact, so when I first started watching, we were watching with our pod. I would make dessert every week And so the week after, I believe, the dodgeball tournament for the 3rd annual dodgeball, I made stripped dodgeball sugar cookies where I had a red team and a blue team. If you go back on my Instagram, you can see pictures. And I know when it is because I made them the night before the 2020 election because I'm a stress baker. And I was so stressed out that I knew I needed to do something to busy my hands. So I made this very complicated, intricate, like they're rolled out sugar cookies, and then I used a gingerbread man cutter, and then I made the icing, and then like the blue team, I think they lost, so they were in this. I made them in the Speedos, and then the red team were in the actual shorts, and everybody had the headband. Every cookie had a headband, and then I even made little dodge balls cut out, and so the dodge bowl has a special place in my heart. And if we were getting together next week to watch it, I would probably make another batch with hot pink and lime green Speedos because that's what the boys wore. But I
For the record, I have nothing going on Monday night.
Well, if you guys come down to Cedar Rapids, we could make. Oh, I don't have tea. We can't watch it live at my house. Never mind. But the Speedos were small. I freaking laughed out loud when Aaron A said, "How can we be playing dodgeball when Yosef's daughter is at home?" Bringing back the whole like Yosef being so appalled by the dodgeball tournament in Claire's season because he's a fun hater. And I thought that I appreciated that they were lime green and hot pink back with the boy bands with the 90s shtick. I laughed. Someone said, I was listening to a podcast where they talked about how they had all the guys wear cups. So there was no one could like comment online about who was more or less endowed because we would have been able to see it in their Speedos. So they had everybody be equally the same size behind the cup. So you can't talk about it on the internet. I think it was for both.
Okay.
They didn't wear them in Dodgeball 3. No, ma'am, they did not. And I thought we had some very good athletes on that dodgeball court. I thought that like most athletic events, the men became way too competitive, way too quickly. But it was entertaining. But I liked it. I'm not gonna lie. I giggled the entire time, and the girls watching on the beach loved every second of it, even when they were getting beamed in the head by dodgeballs.
That was my favorite part, was watching the audience, the spectators, just get nailed.
Mm-hmm. They were too close. They were too close. They needed to have them like behind a partition or something, but they were right on the court. And they were getting hit left, right, and center.
See, this is also part of why I was concerned about what the temperature was, because I noticed that one of the spectators looked really chilly. She seemed very cold. And yet, like, the guys are, out there in their Speedos.
I have been on the Pacific. I've been on, not probably that exact beach, but I've been on the beach in Venice Beach. And then a little bit further south in January, and it is windy and it is cold. It is not like swimsuit going into the ocean weather. And then you could see Charity's hair was blowing all over the place. You could tell it was super windy. It was probably very chilly. And a couple of the guys even made a comment about that too. They're like, it's cold out. That's what's happening. Like, oh boys. But
yeah, I wondered too, they had all these like Sharpie tattoos.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wonder if they filmed like a scene where they did something with that and then it just didn't make the cut.
Because I noticed about halfway, I was like, oh God, really, Caleb, you have a John 3:16 tattoo on your chest? And then I looked at it, I was like, that's a really bad tattoo. And then I looked at it again and I went, oh, they wrote on themselves.
Yeah.
That's than if he had a John 3:16 tattoo on his chest.
And it was kind of confusing because some of them have real tattoos and like trying to kind of parse out which was their, I mean, it looked like Sharpies. So I wondered if they had done some sort of like an activity or a scene around that and then it just got cut. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. So any thoughts about John getting the group date rose?
I have a giant crush on John. John will get my date rose every week until he's voted off the island. I think that because he went right in there and showed some like chutzpah and was like, "Hi, I'm gonna kiss you now." I think she really likes that, and I think he's really just a genuinely like good conversationalist and nice guy, which means he probably won't last forever. But he, I was happy for him. I don't think that who got the MVP? Adrian got the MVP, right? So he got to join the winning team. I kind of think that Caleb Wrestler should have gotten the MVP because he seemed to be really solid the entire time. And Adrian just seemed to do okay at the end from what they showed us in the film. And also because
Xavier was in the running.
Xavier was really good too. But wasn't he on I think Xavier was on the winning team.
Okay.
I also have a giant crush on Xavier. I have a giant crush on like 4 of these guys this season, which is unusual. I think because of how Adrian behaved later on in reflection, it makes me think Adrian deserved the MVP even less than I already thought he deserved it.
Do you think that maybe he was planted, that they knew that him and Braydon had a beef and so
100%. 100%.
Yeah. What are your
thoughts? Because Caleb is just like the aw shucks, I'm a big guy and I'm all muscly and I'm funny and yeah. And he wouldn't have made as good, he wouldn't have been the drama that they need.
Yeah. Yeah, what are your thoughts on Adrian?
I'm gonna stretch. Okay. I don't understand why guys still think that if they narc on somebody else, it makes them look better with the Bachelorette. This happens every season and it never like works for very long.
It immediately moves you into friend zone.
100%, because you're the confidant, you're not the boyfriend.
Yes, you become like the informant. Yeah. Where it doesn't feel like it feels. This even happened to Katie. Right, when Katie was on, I don't remember who season.
Matt. Was she on Matt's?
Maybe. Yeah. Okay. And you're just like, the moment that you kind of take on this, hey, I'm gonna kind of protect you by sharing information with you, I think that you immediately are friend zoning yourself.
Yep. I will also say that you said Adrian is a man. Adrian is a grown man. Adrian has a 1-year-old daughter who he left to be on a show. That isn't I don't think that makes you a man. I think that makes you kind of a crappy dad.
Ooh, I was thinking through that because I was like, ooh, one, what happened to mama? Right.
Right. If he has a 1-year-old, that means he hasn't been broken up from the child's mother for probably very long.
Yeah, I thought about that. And I thought about, leaving a 1-year-old as well. The other thing, the reason that I think he feels like a man, well, like one, he is huge, but also you can tell that he's 33 and that Braydon is 24. Like that.
Braydon is so immature. It is almost comical. Like he is just everything out of his mouth. You're like, oh, you're so, and he's not even like, because there are mature 24-year-olds out there and there are adult 24-year-olds. He is not one of them. He is like, he's like a 13-year-old trapped in the body of a something. I don't know.
He's something. He feels very insecure.
Mm-hmm.
And like it feels like he's trying to be quirky, but it's just annoying.
I think that they already can't stand him. When Chris when Jesse came out and like gave him shade at the very beginning of the show, it was like, they don't do, like, I think that he like annoyed everyone so much in the first few days that they're already just like, whatever, we got to get rid of this guy. Like, he, like, the fact that he was so appalled that the other guys watched Joey and Charity kiss as part of the competition on their group date and didn't do anything about it. It's like, what were they supposed to do? That's part of, this was the group date. They would make them look, I think it would have made them look like super childish, immature jerks if they all stormed off while she was kissing this other guy. The whole point of the show is she's going to be kissing other guys in front of you. If you can't handle it, you're not going to last very long.
Yeah, he's very emotionally fragile. I think that it feels like because he got the first impression rose, that he feels like he staked claims on her and that he is entitled to her attention, right, almost like in the way that you would expect if they were exclusive, but they are clearly not exclusive.
Right. Well, and has anyone ever gotten the first one-on-one after the first impression rose? Is that even a thing? Because if you got your first impression rose, that means she's spent time with you and she's needing to spend time with other guys.
I'm trying to remember. I feel like there was one season where that did happen. Okay. But I can't remember. I wonder if, I don't know. I feel like in my head there's at least one season where that did happen. But yeah, I thought Braydon is interesting. The only place where I second guessed if everyone hates him is I was kind of surprised that some of the men were annoyed that Adrian did bring things up with Charity.
Yeah.
And I thought for sure that they'd just be like, oh yeah, Braydon's awful. But I was surprised at how many of them actually seem to have sided with him.
Well, and I think part of that might be, maybe I'm wrong, and that could be absolutely true. And maybe it's more of a like, Adrian, we barely know each other, and we now absolutely can't trust saying anything around you, because no matter what, clearly you're going to be the whisperer into the ear of Charity for the rest of the time you're on the show. So we're not going to talk about anything around you anymore, because you're going to just go and tell her what happened.
Well, and people oftentimes do get annoyed with the people that are the narcs, right? Because they stir up drama. Like what it does is it stirs up drama, and then it oftentimes does intervene with their ability to have time with the lead. So yeah.
Was it Matt James season? There were never any cocktail parties because there was always drama, and so the cocktail party always got canceled. Yes. Because this is like, oh my gosh, this is awful. Like,
what did you think about her and Joey's connection?
I think he's genuine.
I think he is too.
I think that he, like, if he's not, he might be a sociopath, because the way he was staring at her during the game with Gabby and Nicole Rachel, I just, like, it was intense. It would have made me uncomfortable if I looked up and somebody was staring at me that intensely throughout the entire thing. It would have freaked me out. But she seems to really respond to it. It's why I think it's one of the reasons she chose him for the kiss in the first place. And I think that he is a very, I think he likes her. Yeah, which is good. I mean, you hope so. He's on the show, but
I think he reminded me a little bit of, not to bring up magicians again, but do you remember?
Of course I remember.
A few seasons back, and I believe that he really, really liked, who was the lead that time? He was super into whoever the lead was. And I felt like he was.
Was it Michelle?
It might have been, I felt like he was this like puppy dog, had like this, smitten, I'm so loyal to you sort of thing, but it felt very one-sided. And I
Yeah.
actually really like Joey, but I do wonder if the intensity that he has for her is like shared by Charity.
Maybe it's too early for it to be shared as intensely, because the other thing I always try to remember is they only have to give their attention to one person. She has to give her attention to 19 people, and she's trying to meet and get to know 19 people while they only have to get to know her. So it would make sense for them to start like building feelings before she might, because they're like tuned in and intent on one person, and she has to like play the field.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I wanted to ask you too, do you see, because her date with Aaron B at the very start was a really good date.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept having this feeling where I was like, ooh, they are a really good match. And then I was like, yeah, he's not gonna make it. Like, I just feel like
I feel like they're too similar. Their backgrounds are very similar. And so maybe he doesn't make it to the final 4 or the final 2, but then after she breaks up with the person that she gives her final rose to, maybe he sneaks back into her DMs and is like, hey, remember that awesome day at the Hollywood sign? You want to do it again? And then maybe they start dating.
I like this imagined plan that you have for them.
Thank you.
I mean, I think he's lovely. I just think that there's like a playfulness to her, something that I don't feel like he brings out or something. I don't know. I
do think it's very interesting that the guys who are in therapy all definitely make you want to know that they're in therapy, because they use all the buzzwords and the buzz phrases when they're talking, and or say that they are in therapy or they've talked to a therapist, which is refreshing. But also, I think is it starting to dilute its importance, because they're like, or is it just like this is just how people are now, and there are more and more people in therapy, so it's not like a novelty, it's just like this is part of me. Whereas probably even 10 seasons ago, all of the men should have been in therapy and none of the men were in therapy. Now maybe all the men are in therapy, and so it's not even a thing they really talk about anymore.
Well, I like that they're having these deep discussions, and I do think that there is a vulnerability to them disclosing that they've been working through their issues, and then especially because she's also a therapist, right? And I feel like you can hear that in the way that she asks questions. If you notice, the way that she'll ask questions, even in conversation, are very, I grew up with a mom who was like a substance abuse counselor in a prison. And so I kind of know that speak. And I picked up on it a few times when she was on dates, that she was asking questions like, oh, that's the language that like a therapist. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like that they're having these deep, I've been wanting that from these episodes, so I really shouldn't complain. But there was this thing when I was watching her and Aaron, I was like, oh, this is such a great date, and they have so much in common, and they're having a real conversation. And I was like, and he is absolutely not going to be the winner. Like, I don't know. Like, I just felt that, and I was kind of trying to tease it out. All right, Kim's Corner.
Okay.
What you got for us?
I in the joy and fun of looking up and thinking about boy band names, I kind of did a little deep dive in my own memory box. So I wanted to so you and I are about the same age. We grew up in the golden era of boy bands, the 90s. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about boy bands, and then talk about your favorite boy bands and my favorite boy bands, and then I have a couple of other random things as well. So first of all, apparently the Beatles have been described by journalists, not by themselves, as the first boy band, because of their the teen girl fandom that just like attacked them from the very beginning. But I was thinking about all like the singing groups in the 50s and the 60s, and when those, I mean, like rock music in the 50s was just like crazy for teenagers no matter what. So I don't agree with the journalist that the Beatles were the first boy band. If their only category for that is because of the fans, because we know that like well, obviously Elvis wasn't a boy band, but he had a huge teen girl following. Like the Temptations are amazing. They were not on any boy band list that I could find. All these other bands that I listened to growing up, because my parents, like the Beach Boys, aren't considered a boy band, which I think is weird, because they look like a boy, like they look like a boy band. But I went to the Google, and I Googled boy bands, and all these like lists came up. And so the top 10 most successful boy bands, according to this one website, didn't include the Beatles. So I would say that means the Beatles are not a boy band, because they would be the number one most successful boy band, I would think, if we used the category that we just talked about. But who do you think?
Do you have to dance in order to be a boy band?
Like, well, the Beatles didn't really dance though. The Temptations danced.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Is there like, is it a combination of fandom and harmony and
probably?
What
do you think is the definition of a boy band, and we'll use that moving forward as what we think a boy band is.
Well, I hadn't given it much thought until this conversation.
You don't think about boy bands every day?
I know.
Come on, Danielle.
But like I feel like boy bands also had a very particular sound in the 90s.
They did. And they all sounded exactly the same.
So, it was this mix of pop and then these ballads, which I don't feel like there's as much good ballad music these days. And it was also how they performed. And I do think that type of dancing, because it's not like dancing was new in the 90s on the stage, but I do think that something was shifting in terms of, if you were a big name, you had to be dancing. Like that kind of performance was expected. But
there's a lot of arm dancing in the 90s.
Oh yeah. Of course, like I gotta say, I am terrible at this sort of stuff. Like music knowledge this is where you don't want me to be the trivia partner, right? That's why you gotta take Kim to trivia with you.
So I'll tell you the top 10 most successful boy bands.
Okay, I want to hear it.
Number 10, and I don't know what their basis is on this. This was just a list I found on the internet, so it's probably not accurate. I think it was like selling wise, like records sold or something. So number 10 is One Direction. Have you heard of One Direction?
Absolutely.
Okay. Number 9 is Take That.
I don't know that.
So that was early 90s Robbie Williams. It's a UK band. Yeah. I know Robbie Williams. I don't know Take That. Number 8 is Westlife. That was an Irish band. I didn't recognize any of their music on the list, but if I heard it, I might recognize it. Number 7, NSYNC.
Oh, yeah.
I was surprised at how high NSYNC was. Number 7. Number 6, Menudo. So that was a band in the mid-90s. Ricky Martin was in that band.
Oh, yeah.
Number 5, Boyz II Men.
Yeah.
DVD. I saw them live at the state fair on the free stage a few years ago.
You know what?
They aren't free anymore, but they were free then, and they were glorious.
It's interesting.
New Kids on the Block.
I would have defined Boyz II Men as a boy band, and I know, of course, like it kind of makes sense that they are. But again, they had a different sound. They're like R&B and not pop.
But they did have choreography that they did together.
They did.
And they had they had a bass and a tenor and all the others.
All right,
Yep.
I'll count them.
So number 4 is New Kids on the Block.
So cool.
I would argue the greatest boy band ever made.
Obviously. Danny.
Number 3, Jackson 5.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Number 2 made me giggle. The Osmonds are considered a boy band.
But
because the brothers had their own band before it was Donnie and Marie.
Huh.
So the brothers are a boy band. And then Donnie split and performed with Marie. And I hate that I know any of what I just said. And then the number 1 boy band, Backstreet's Back. All right.
So Backstreet is like way more popular than NSYNC.
Well, and I think part of it is Backstreet Boys still tour. So they're still bringing in money. They still release songs. So they're still making money that way. Since Justin Timberlake left, NSYNC hasn't done anything. So I think that's part of it. But I think it's hilarious that the Osmonds from the 70s and the Jackson 5 from the 70s have outsold NSYNC.
Yeah.
And then I went to a Teen Vogue article, and they listed the top 33 best boy bands. And they didn't, I thought they were listing them in alphabetical order because they started with BTS, which is a K-pop group. I didn't know any of there was like 7 or 8 K-pop names on this list. I don't know K-pop. I don't know any of these guys. But there are some really, like, do you remember O-Town?
Oh, yeah.
And do you remember All for One?
Absolutely.
Oh, my life. Hanson was considered a boy band, according to Teen Vogue.
Oh, yeah. I would consider Hanson a boy band.
New Edition with Bobby Brown. Jodeci, which had Casey and JoJo in it, who did their own thing when I was in high school. The Jonas Brothers are considered a boy band, I guess.
Yeah.
And
the Jonas Brothers felt like a later boy band.
Yeah. Well, and there's the K-pop, and there's a bunch of like bands on here. Oh, 98 Degrees. But we know that 98 Degrees, at least that Nick Lachey is trash because we've both read Jessica Simpson's memoir. So we know that Nick Lachey is a no bueno. But there's like some really interesting, more recent boy bands that I obviously have never heard of, that were like created from Nickelodeon or even like Disney's still making boy bands.
Yeah.
So that is my Kim's Corner on the delightfulness of boy bands. Were you NSYNC or Backstreet Boys?
I think I was more Backstreet Boys.
Me too. I've been to 2 of their concerts as an adult. Thank you. And one of them they were touring with New Kids on the Block. So I got to see New Kids on the Block and the Backstreet Boys and KOTBSB. It was magic.
That's amazing. I think I had a New Kids on the Block sleeping bag or something like that. Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't study this, but there are some people in my field that do like music as communication. And I bet that there are all sorts of, in like the Pop Culture Association articles about boy bands. And I feel like I now need to know what is the definition of a boy band. So
that is your homework for when we get to Danielle's. What did we call yours? Danielle's dish.
Danielle's dirt.
Danielle's dirt.
I don't know.
I like it.
I don't know. Okay, so before we finish up tonight,
yes,
I have to know, did you notice like what was happening with chapstick in these men? And I know that they like pointed it out, like they made a bigger deal about it with Braydon near the end, but it wasn't just Braydon. Like I noticed chapstick a few times in these episodes.
I think it was so chilly for them and the air is dry there that they were like, my lips require lots of chapstick in the winter because it's so dry. So I'm guessing that they just wanted to make sure that their lips were extra moisturized for their kisses during the barbecue.
I'm reading a pretty outlandish romance novel right now.
Yes.
And the main character is like a famous YouTuber, and she puts Carmex in her bra between her boobs, and so that it warms up the Carmex, because you know how like the Carmex, like, one, tastes really disgusting, but like also like is always a little hard. So it's like she warms it up and then she puts it on, and this is like a really important thing about this character. And so I did have this moment watching this episode where I was like, is this just in my head from like this romance novel that I'm reading? That like now I'm starting, it's like if you like want a Jeep, you see Jeeps everywhere. Like, did I read about chapstick? Now I'm seeing chapstick everywhere.
No, I'm not reading a book where people put Carmex between their boobs and then put it. Does she like stick her finger down and then put it, or does she is she like able to like move her boobs up and like put her face in there?
No,
I hope that's no. Please let this be the screenshot.
People that are like listening, you should just go over to YouTube, and just for Kim's motion right there, the gesture was absolutely inappropriate for children. Like, this is so good. But so no, she just puts like the tube of it there, and actually and then she'll take it out and put it on, and it's warmed up. And it's actually an important part because her brother has some problems and he wants her to give her some money for a business idea that he wants her to support, and she won't do it. And then he gets to pitch his idea to her, and it's for a chapstick line that's called, I don't know, boob stick or something like that. That's like purposefully made for you to keep in your bra, but it won't like be pokey,
So Molly Ringwald in The Breakfast Club puts her lipstick between her boobs. Again, please go to YouTube right now. And then like puts her mouth down and puts her lipstick on by having the tube of lipstick wedged between her boobs. Is that similar to what this woman? Here's what I think your corner should be on the podcast is you give us book recommendations of spicy books for people to read.
This one's very, very fun. And it was actually a recommendation from my sister. So, oh gosh, let me see if I can find the title of it now so I can give the author a shout out. So it's called Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. I'll make sure Bill puts it in the show notes.
Okay.
But it's really lovely. It's super fun. And yeah. And I realized that I don't have a city to give a shout out to, so I'm going to give a shout out to our local listeners in Cedar Falls.
Yay!
Yeah.
Do we know what facts do we know about Cedar Falls? Because Bill always has facts.
There are roundabouts in Cedar Falls, and the community has feelings about that.
They do, and it cracks me up because I love roundabouts. My feelings are more roundabouts, please.
Yes, Cedar Falls, Iowa is also the home of the University of Northern Iowa. There is a dome.
Mm-hmm. There's a really good tea shop down called the Tea Cellar that I like to stop at when I'm in town because they have really good teas.
It's a delightful downtown area. There's a river, and
there is a river.
Nearby in Waterloo, Iowa, there is John Deere. There's a big John Deere plant. So that is.
And the same river in Cedar Falls goes to Waterloo. So you could kayak from Cedar Falls to Waterloo. And then you could kayak down to Cedar Rapids and see me.
You can actually ride your bike on bike trails. All the way.
You can. I have officially ridden, not all at once, but I've ridden from Waterloo to Cedar Rapids now. Through Cedar Rapids to Ely on my bike.
So if you all are listening and you need an interesting and unexpected vacation destination.
And inexpensive.
Yes. And Cedar Falls, Iowa could be your place. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week, folks.
Bye.
You have been listening to Bachademai with your hosts, Danielle Dick McGee, Kim Hanna,
and Bill Henniger.
All thoughts and opinions expressed on the show are solely those of the person who spoke them.
If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to the show, leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Also, please share with your family, friends, colleagues, and other ardent Bachelor fans.
If you have comments or questions you would like us to address on the show, you can email us at bachademia@gmail.com.
Or on the Twitter with the handle @Bachademia.
Thanks for listening.